How's it hanging, fellas? I'm OrosZ, and this is another episode of Mortal Kombat. In today's episode, we're playing a Cyrax, who is an assassin member of Lin Kuei,
what are you doing?
who's later gonna become a cyborg.
I'm assigned to kill Johnny Cage.
And with that, he's gonna become 10 times more fucking lame.
What do you mean?
He is terminating your agreement.
What's her name again? Shiva. I wanted to call her Shira. Yeah, Shiva has huge tits and 4 arms. That's her main fucking features. You know what, I think her design disappointed me the most in MK11 when she shows up for like a second. She looks kinda lame and fucking dumb. Like, why did she change so much over these 2 games? The other characters are kinda more humanized, but she's not a human to begin with. Her with huge tits I could understand, because she's like a weird fucking tribal princess of the Shokan or whatever the fuck. That's the species that she and Goro are a part of. And you might be thinking, how is the fucking... Okay, Goro and Shiva are Shokan. That makes sense, right? So why the fuck... what's his name again? There's like a Goro who's like a tiger. Well, originally they probably just took Goro's design and put tiger stripes on him to make him a bit different. I like Cyrax because he has a lot of really fucking cool attacks. Nice. Fucking uppercut is good. He uses a lot of bombs, nets, and buzzsaws. This attack Shiva has is the most fucking annoying thing. You know what, I was gonna explain you what the fuck his deal is, the Tiger Goro, I forgot his name. But I honestly don't remember. I think it's just like a subspecies of Shokan who are like animal looking. And supposedly they're like the worst batch of Shokan. They're not treated with as much respect. Because they're not as like civilized as the other guys. They're more like animal-ish in their behavior, which I guess makes sense because they look like an animal. I did some kind of a cool fucking combo by accident. Every cool combo I pull off in this game is by accident because I'm not very good at this game. I'm not good at fighting games in general, but I just love Mortal Kombat for its lore and blood. And gameplay too. Just not very good at it, but I do like playing Mortal Kombat.
Cyrax wins.
I need to have a talk with your master.
Like fucking... Last night I was trying to go to sleep and I
You mean to finish me?
just laid in bed
Stop the actor.
until like fucking 7 in the morning, and I just fucking laid there for like 7 hours until I finally fucking fell asleep. That was fucking horrible. If I'm being honest. Talking about Lupin finale in the last episode. I didn't begin watching part 6 or anything. But there is one more episode to part 5. Because it's 25 episodes and the finale is the 24th episode, so here we have 25th episode, which is just a big fan fiction pretty much. I mean, fan fiction is official, so it's not fan fiction, but what I'm saying is, what's the better word that we could use? Fan third. It's basically a big callback to part 1, episode 1. Part 1, episode 1 is Lupin takes part in a race, and the main bad guy of that episode is Mr. X. Who's like an little old man. From what I believe, he kidnapped Fujiko for information and he's like torturing her by tickling her. And Lupin's racing and he's about to get like assassinated on the racetrack, but he dodges that. I think Goemon's not in that episode, which he is in this one. Because Goemon back then wasn't a good guy. He shows up later in part 1 and he's a bad guy. And then later he becomes one of the main good guys. God, why am I fucking so anxious right now? Holy shit. What's wrong with me? Barak is cool. I wish we could play as some of the bad guys. We never got to play as the bad guys in this series. We always play as like... I guess Scorpion and Cyrax aren't very good people. Nice. Yeah, so Lupin's taking part in a race again. Speaking of Mr. X, he actually comes back in part 2, episode 1, where he comes back and now he's like a big boss robot-looking dude, but he's not a robot. He's kind of like the Colossus from X-Men, where his skin is made of metal. I forget, and he dies. But he comes back in this part, and the previous episodes and this episode imply that all the previous parts happen, and they're canonical. So I guess Mr. X is back to being a little old man? Maybe that Mr. X in part 2 wasn't real Mr. X?
Sektor.
So Lupin taking part in a race, but he's taking part... It's funny because in part 1, Lupin raced in like a blue race car, which makes sense for a race, right? And that race car makes an appearance here, but it's not Lupin driving it, it's just one of the bad guys driving it, some no-name bad guys, while Lupin is driving in his Fiat.
Alright then.
Oh, Johnny Cage is in his cool outfit, not his stupid suit. And this is probably my favorite Johnny Cage look.
Round 1. Fight!
I'm not sure if he has the same outfit in Mortal Kombat 10. I think he has something similar to it, but like Mortal Kombat 10, Johnny Cage is like older, wiser a bit. And his design is that he looks like this, but he has like a jacket on. And in Mortal Kombat 11, base design of Johnny Cage is like him. He just looks like a I don't know, like a military commander. He was like a fucking army vest on him and shit like that. And so, the fuck I was saying about Lupin, is so Mr. X comes back for inexplicable reasons and invites him to a race. I think this is supposed to be played after part 5. But it's like, I think it's a bit strange how it's like, I don't know, it's like a deja vu kind of thing. They're having a race, Lupin slowly eliminates everybody out of the race, because they're all playing dirty when he's fucking them over with their own tricks. So the only two racers that are in the race is Lupin and Zenigata, because Zenigata's also in the race for some reason. And Fujiko's trying to sneak into Mr. X's mansion and steal some bullshit from him. Some bullshit golden statue, but she gets kidnapped and tickled. Just like she was in the original episode, and Mr. X comes back. I kind of forgot what Mr. X looks like. And then a different villain makes an appearance. It's the guy from... He's really cool, and he's probably one of the better Lupin the First villains. And I know that he was a villain in one of part 2 episodes, I forgot which one. But he shows up, he's a time traveler, he has a time machine, and he shows up from the future to kill Lupin because of some stuff Lupin did in the future. And Lupin doesn't even know what the fuck is the stuff he will do to him to piss him off so much. But I remember that this same, it's not the same character, but in Lupin the Third, Elusiveness of the Fog, that title I'll never forget, which is the movie that basically Lupin travels back in time. And I remember one of the reveals in that movie was that the side character girl who we kept following was implied to be Fujiko's ancestor. She was like a warrior lady. I guess it was just an excuse to get the same voice actor to play her, right? Didn't really mattered much that it was Fujiko's ancestor. Yeah, and in that movie, the main bad guy is this guy's, like, grandchild? I remember that he comes back from the future and he says something like, Lupin the 33rd stole his girlfriend, so he went back in time to kill Lupin the 1st. Because of what Lupin's great 33 greats, 32? Yeah, I guess 32. 32 greats son did. It's pretty great, see? And yeah, it's the same, I mean, it's not the same guy, it's the guy from part 2. I don't remember that episode from part 2 with the time traveler, but this is him. He's really threatening. He's honestly a better villain than whatever the fuck villain we had in part 5 overall. These two villains, this time traveling guy. He's like really threatening. He makes Lupin travel in time, in the past. So now Lupin is, I guess, in part 1. Another villain from part 1 shows up. He was like a magician. He was like an evil magician who Lupin just couldn't figure out all the tricks he was like doing. And then like they keep changing their designs from like their part 1 designs, they go to part 2, and it's pretty cool. And yeah, basically, it's Lupin just keep racing with Zenigata, even though Zenigata doesn't seem to give a shit that he's traveling through time. I forgot what the reason Fujiko was tortured for was, but some guy shows up and it's like implied that this is taking place.
That should shut you up.
Oh my god, what the fuck? Before Lupin met Jigen? Oh yeah, finish him off, kill him. Kill Johnny Cage. Don't do it. Do it.
I won't kill him.
Ah, lame. Lame-o. Yeah, and he screws over Jigen's car, and Jigen's having a duel with this guy. I don't remember this episode, but I guess it happened. And in the original episode, I guess he doesn't screw over his car. So Jigen loses the duel, which I guess he originally
I
won.
eliminated him from the tournament. He didn't need to die.
So he loses the duel against this bad guy.
I used my judgment.
And then later, when Lupin comes back to the future, he finds Jigen to be like a homeless man, because I guess he lost his firing arm. So now he's not as good of a gunman, so he can't earn a living. He meets Goemon. I guess it's one of the part 1 episodes where Goemon's master is the main bad guy. And I guess in the original one, I don't really remember this episode very well, I guess Lupin manages to convince Goemon to betray his master because he's evil. The master is evil, not Lupin. And then in this episode, in this alternative timeline, Lupin fails to convince him, so Goemon's a bad guy. And then he gotta crash his car. And he, I guess, gets amnesia or whatever. And then we get some episodes which I vaguely remember, which was like an episode of part 1 where Fujiko was genuinely in love with the bad guy of that episode. And I don't remember what happened, but Lupin kills the bad guy in this attempt, and Fujiko freaks out and shoots Lupin. And she becomes a bad guy too, and later when Lupin comes to, and his new alternative timeline where he doesn't have his crew because they're all a bit screwed over by a time machine, he finds Jigen as a homeless man, Fujiko and Goemon are working together and they're assassins. Zenigata chases after them and he doesn't care about Lupin at all. And then something funny happens where Lupin meets the time traveler who tried to kill him but he failed. So he uses the time machine to put the main bad guys in like dinosaur time, so they're just stuck there. Presumably later eaten by a dinosaur. I don't know, some other shit happens, so... Then Lupin's back with his friends, because I guess he also went back in time using that same time machine he just used over to screw over the bad guys to now, you know...
Tell the Grandmaster.
What the fuck I was saying? To get his friends back. So that's the real ending of part 5. Uh-oh, Cyrax doesn't like me. Wait, I'm Cyrax, this was Sektor. Never mind then. See you fellas in the next episode, bye.
I present this latest creation of